I am so excited to be sharing these cozy Christmas craft ideas. Be sure to go into your stash of sweaters as that is what we're going to use today. Let's get crafting. I had this sleeve left over from a previous sweater project. It's just a small piece, but it'll be perfect for our project. I turned it inside out. As you can see, the seam is on the outside now. I'm scrunching up the end that I had cut off from the original sweater. I'm just going to be using some hot glue here to close it all up. Now, as you know, I'm sure by now, I am not much of a sewer. You could definitely hand stitch this, but sometimes glue guns are just way easier than digging out your needle and thread, so that's what I decided to do today. Let me know, are you a hot glue person or do you like to use a needle and thread? Okay, back to our project. I turned our little sleeve inside out. I noticed that there was still a few spots that weren't glued together, so I'm just going to go in now and just add a touch more glue. Now I put it back down onto my work surface, and I've got a craft mat here, and the hot glue actually helped to keep it stable. So now I'm going in and adding some white rocks. Now you want to make sure you use a light colored rock. I used a darker colored rock originally, and you could see the rocks through our sweater sleeve. All right, the rocks are just to help to stabilize our project. Now I'm going to fill it up with some fiberfill, just enough so I got a nice puffy little pillow here. And then I'm going to scrunch up the top, and I'm going to use some hot glue again to close that up. Of course, again, like I mentioned before, you can definitely use a needle and some thread. I did have to go in again and add a little bit more hot glue, and I'm just pressing it all together until the glue sets. Now I am going to start to create a snowman. Yes, this is going to be a cute little snowman. So I've got some string here, and I'm just going to wrap it around, and I'm making sure that the top is smaller than the bottom. Now it will depend on how long your sweater sleeve is that you're using. That'll determine if you're going to have 2 tiers or 3 tiers, or snowballs, if you will. Of course, you could make this using an old sock as well. That would definitely be a really cute project too. Okay, so I wrapped the string around. Once I've got the size head that I desired, tied it off with a knot, and then I'm just going to clip the ends, and I'm just playing around here until the shape is to my liking. I have another scrap of sweater here that's left over from a previous project, and I don't usually use the color blue, but I thought I would try it out for this project. What I'm doing is just measuring how wide I want my little toque that I'm going to be making, how wide I want it, and then I'm just going to cut my piece so I've got a nice little kind of rectangular shape. And I'm just trying to figure out which is the right and wrong side. Now, I just noticed right here, I had glued this together the wrong way. I glued this together the long way instead of the wide way, and my toque was too small, but I'm still going to make it work. I didn't notice that when I was putting the project together. Anyway, so you can see I glued the seams together. I had sandwiched the two sides together. The right sides were together. I didn't glue it all the way to the edge, and there's a reason why, and I'll show you here in a minute. I flipped this piece right side out, and trimmed off the excess on the bottom just to straighten it out. I created a cuff as you saw me do. And then what I'm doing here is figuring out the front and the back. So you want to make sure the seam of your sweater sleeve is at the back, and then the toque seam is at the back as well. So I'm going to slip this little guy over my little snowman's head, and it was tight, but I did make it work. And you can see I still have that open end. So once I've got my toque in place, I'm going to go ahead and glue that in place, again, just using some hot glue. I'm not using too much hot glue, just a little bit at the back and a little bit at the front. So I decided that I wanted to create a fringe for the end of my toque. You don't have to do this step. You could just clip it right off and add a little pom-pom. That would be really cute, but I like the look of a fringe. So I'm going to go ahead and just snip a few strips at the top here like you see me doing. That's why I didn't glue it together, because I didn't need that part to be glued. I'm also being careful here not to cut too far down, just where the glue ends. So I really like how that looks. Now I'm just going to gather it up and fluff it up a bit. I'm going to use some string to tie it, just a simple knot. I think this little guy is coming together really nicely. I felt like my fringe was just a little too long, so I'm going to just trim it down, and then I'm like, ugh, I trimmed it a little too much. Oh well, we're just going to make do with what we're doing here. Okay, so now I'm going to start to embellish our little guy. I have another strip of the sweater, some buttons here, a little cute little decorative one, and some black buttons. And I also have some flat back pearls. You can see they're silver in color. I have one that's black already, but I wanted to just show you what it would look like using a Sharpie. So I've just got a black Sharpie permanent marker here, and I'm just going over those flat back pearls. And when I was coloring it, I realized that it is actually coming out the same color as our toque and scarf, which I thought was really cool. I'll show you what it looks like compared together right here. Now, the black one, I can't remember. I think it might have been a paint marker, but I'm not 100% sure. Experiment and see what will work best for you. All right, so now to decorate our little snowman, I got my scarf. I just tied it around his neck, and I'm just going to make some adjustments here. You can glue it into place here at the back and at the front if you'd like. I didn't bother because I'm going to be gluing it in a few other spots. I'm just straightening out the strands here, trying to figure out how I want that to be placed. And then I'm going to go ahead and start to glue those ends onto the body of our little snowman. Now, I thought maybe like creating a fringe on the end of our scarf would be really cute, but I didn't think of that until I was doing this voiceover for the video. All right, so I'm going to just trim it up just a little bit because I felt like the one strand was just a little too long, and now I'm going to glue that into place as well. So now I'm going to add the cute little buttons. And you can use flat back pearls for this as well, but I've got such a big stash of buttons, I want to try and use them whenever I can. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those with some hot glue. So now for the eyes. I found it easier to apply the glue directly to the snowman and then put the little flat back pearls into place. I really need to invest in some tweezers. I think it will make it a lot easier for me to do these small little projects since I've got bigger fingers. Plus, I was wearing a Band-Aid and my Band-Aid kept on getting stuck to the hot glue, which was frustrating me. Okay, I'm going to add the decorative button. I wanted that on the toque. I felt like this button, like it's like acrylic or glass. I'm not 100% sure, but it reminded me of a snowflake. So I thought it would be a fun touch. But first you saw me bend the toque over and then glue that into place. Now I'm adding the button by using some hot glue. I'm just covering up the knot of our string. I think that just is such a pretty little touch. Okay, don't worry. I have not forgotten about the nose. I have this scrap of dark orange sweater. And I'm just going to cut like a little triangle here, and I'm going to use that for the nose. It actually worked out really well. But if you don't have an orange sweater, then you could use a piece of felt or other fabric, or you could even just draw one on. Maybe you've got like some clay or something. You can mold a little carrot, but this sweater actually worked out really well for me. Okay, this guy turned out so cute. I am definitely going to have to make at least one more to complete a set, but let me know what you think of this cute little guy. So I've got another scrap of sweater, and this one has quite a few holes in it. It's a really old sweater that I had from when I was younger, and I kept it because I knew I wanted to try and make some crafts out of it. You can see I folded it over. I'm just going to trim off the cuff. Now you can set that aside and save it for another project, but for my project, I didn't feel like I needed to use that cuff. Now I'm going to cut along the folded edge as well, because I needed a top layer and a bottom layer for this project. So all I'm going to do is just cut a large triangle. Remember, I've got 2 layers of the sweater. I'm just eyeballing this, and then I'm going to trim off any excess to create as even of a triangle as I can create. So you want your 2 good sides together, and the rough sides are facing out. I'm going to go along the edge and add a bead of glue. Now I will say this, you are going to see the hot glue a little bit here, but if you use a lighter fabric, you're not going to see it. But if you want, you could try using some seam binder, but I don't know if that will work for this or not. If you know, please leave that in the comment section. And of course, for this project, you may want to stitch it, but me and my sewing machine, we just don't get along. So anyways, I am going to leave a little bit of a pocket at the bottom of this piece. As you can see, I have created a tree shape. I have, over the past few years now, have kind of collected a bit of a tree collection. And so I thought I'm going to add to it, and I'm going to show you what it looks like all together so far. I wanted to start to fill our little tree here, but I needed to turn this back around, and I'm clipping the corners just so they're not too bulky, and so I get a bit more of a point to them. You can go in there with a pencil and push them out if you'd like. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to turn this right side out. Yes, right side out. And then if you've got any mistakes like I've got here where I missed a spot, just go back in and glue it. You'll just have to turn it back around so it's facing the right way. Okay, so now I'm going to finish turning this back out the right way. And now you can start to fill it up with your fiberfill. I like to get the big bulk bags at Walmart, but you can also use their cheap pillows. I know some people have also used old pillows. That's always an option as well. So I'm going to just continue to fill this up. Don't forget the corners on the bottom there. And you're going to want to just move this around a little bit. You don't want to stuff it too full. You do want to have a little bit of space, and I'll show you why here in a moment. So I had a few lumpy spots, so I'm just going to go in and adjust the filling accordingly. Okay, I wanted to use a branch for the tree trunk. Now, looking here, I probably should have used the thicker stem, but I'm just going to go with what I have because it's already in place here. I'm going to go ahead and shove that branch up on the bottom, and then go ahead and add a little bit more fiber fill because I didn't have it completely filled there on the bottom. And then I noticed my sweater was nicely curving in on itself to create a seam. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue to close up the bottom around the tree trunk. And don't forget to add a little bit of hot glue around our little tree trunk to help hold that in place as well. All right, the glue is all set, and now to create our stand. I've got this little stump. I just picked it up from, I think it was like my local dollar store, but you can get these anywhere. I'm adding a little bit of hot glue to the stump, and then I'm making sure that the bottom of my branch is nice and flat as can be. And then I'm going to put this into place into the glue, and you want to make sure you hold it till it sets. Add a little bit more extra glue so it goes up the stem of the tree, and hold that until it sets as well. And now it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, I decided I wanted to cover up the glue using some green preserved reindeer moss, and that's going to match my other trees, and I'll show you here in a minute. But I have to say, these trees are so cute. I made a set of 2, and they look perfect with my little tree collection. For this project, I'm going to be using just a scrap piece of some white cardstock that I had, and I'm tracing a basic shape of an owl. So I'm just creating a scoop on the top and coming around and making the body. It does not have to be perfect. You can get some free printable templates online. You just have to do a bit of a Google search, but I thought I would just wing it here and just draw it myself. Now, I do have a larger version of a sweater owl that I had done last year for a fall craft. I'll have that video posted down below in the description box for you, but I thought it would be really fun to create a small version to make a Christmas ornament. So I've got my shape cut out. Now I'm going to be using this scrap of sweater again. I really like the color for just a nice neutral look. And I flipped it upside down and I'm going to trace around my owl template using a Sharpie. I tried to use a pencil, but it just wasn't transferring onto the sweater. So you want to make sure you're going to do this project on the back side when you're tracing around it with a marker. And you'll also want to create two. Now I'm just going to cut them out and make sure you're using some really good scissors. These scissors that I've got here are strictly for fabric. I've got both my owl's pieces cut out, and again, you want to make sure the two good sides are together and the two bad sides are facing out. And then the same thing as the tree, you're going to run a bead of hot glue along the edge and you're going to just seal up those edges together. I am leaving the top of our owl head open, just like with a little bit of a pocket, so I can stuff it and add a hanger. So you can see here, I've got that top open, and all I'm going to do is just add like just a little bit of hot glue on either side, but still keeping an opening for myself so I can stuff this little owl. Make sure your glue is all set before you start to fill this as well. That's really important. Okay, so the glue is set. Now I'm going to turn it around. And again, you want to trim off those little corners as needed, just so that they're not too bulky when you turn them back around. And then I'm going to use a pencil to help to poke those out so that they're a little bit more pointy. All right, so now it's time to stuff our little owl. Again, same thing as the tree. You just want to just move it around and make adjustments as needed. And again, I didn't want to make it too full. I find that if you have things like this too full, it makes it harder to close up the hole. You can also see that my owl is a little bit lopsided because I didn't glue it properly. Yes, I know. That was my mistake, but I'm still happy with this little guy. I think he's turned out really, really cute. So for the hanger, I am using some yarn. I just folded it in half. It's almost the same color as the sweater that I used. I just tied a knot on the end, trimmed off the excess tails, and that's going to be going in the center on the top. But first I closed up my hole just a little bit more because I tried to put the hanger into place when the hole was a little bit bigger, and it just kept on popping out when I was trying to glue my hole shut. So I'm just gonna, again, like I said, close that up a little bit more. It was a little bit trickier here. Once that's closed up as much as I could, I'm going to go ahead and add our little hanger. The knot fit in there perfectly. Add some hot glue. Again, make sure that you add a little bit of hot glue to help hold the hanger into place and allow the glue to set well. Okay, so now for the wings. I had this other sweater scrap and I was just trying to decide on what pattern to use for the wings. And all you're going to do is just cut out just a basic kind of like oblong shape, kind of like an oval, but you want the tips to be somewhat like if they're up to be a bit of a peak. if that makes sense. Here, I'll show you right here. You can see how I'm just kind of wrapping it around, and both ends have a bit of a point, but one side is a little bit flatter than the other, which I was okay with. I thought it would just help with the look of the wing. And then I'm going to cut another one because you do need two. I'm just going to lay the pieces on top of each other and then cut around them. Cut around the one that's already been done. It's already complete. I still made a mistake though, because I was pulling my other sweater a little bit too tight. So be careful of that. But you can just trim these down until you get a shape that you're happy with, and until they are as even as possible. I'm sure you could cut out templates for your wings as well, but at this point I was just kind of winging it, and no pun intended, but I was just putting things together and it worked really well. So I added a little bit of hot glue to my wing, put it into place, and then going back in and adding a little bit more. I felt like it was just easier for me to handle this without getting a bunch of hot glue all over my fingers. All right, the wings are in place. Now for the eyes. I'm cutting out 2 patches from this more neutral gray color here, and I'm just trying to make the circles as even as possible, rounding them out just by trimming them. And again, like I said, you need 2 of these. For the beak, I'm going to be using this brown sweater scrap that I had. These are all sweaters that I have used over the last several years for all kinds of different projects. I will have a playlist of all of those listed down below for you to check out. Okay, I'm going to just cut out a little triangle as you see me doing there. And now I'm going to start to glue my eyes and the beak into place. I decided to cut the tips of the owl's beak just a little bit on the top before gluing it into place. That way here it fit nice against the eyes really well. So that's how it's looking so far. I'm using some buttons to complete the eyes. I thought these buttons were perfect. They're kind of like a neutral color with a bit of brown around the edge. I thought it was really fitting. So by now, I'm sure a lot of you know how much I love to add natural elements to my projects, so I thought it would be really cool to have this owl perched on a branch. So I'm just going to trim it down, and then I'm going to just add just a bit of hot glue to the bottom. I didn't want to put too much because I am actually going to stitch. I know, I'm going to actually stitch. Wow. I thought it would be really cute to stitch them onto the branch. So I've got some brown embroidery thread here, and I'm going to start to stitch around the branch. That will help hold the owl onto the branch. But I also thought it would create the illusion of the owl's talons. It will look like they're wrapped around the branch and he's just sitting there. I thought it was a really cute touch. I was inspired by a few different projects I had seen on Pinterest when I was just researching some templates for this. And I thought it was just such a cute look. So I'm no professional here when it comes to this. So I decided to add a little bit of hot glue just to help hold the knot in place. And now I'm going to go ahead and stitch several times. I think I did about 3 or 4 stitches. I'm not exactly sure here. I think it was 3. Anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and stitch, and then I'm going to tie it off at the back. And I did make a little bit of mess, but it was nothing that a little hot glue could not fix. So I went ahead and I did the same thing on the other side, and then I'm taking my fingernails and I'm just spreading those threads out so it looks like talons wrapped around the branch. But I have to say, this little guy turned out so adorable. Let me know what you think. I picked up this sweater vest at the thrift store. I really liked the pattern for crafting, but for personal wear, I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it would be perfect for crafting. And don't worry, I checked, this is not worth a whole lot. So I felt comfortable cutting this up for a craft project. So I'm going to give you some templates to use in Canva. The link is down below. There's 2 parts to it. It's also printed out on 8.5 by 14-inch paper, but I also have a smaller version for you to use if you want to create a smaller stocking for your project. So you can see I've got the 2 pieces printed out, and I am going to just line things up as you see me doing here. And these have all been like cut and pasted together in Canva so that they are all the correct dimensions. So that's really important. If you're going to start to adjust things in Canva, then do so at your own risk of having the sizes adjusted. But this worked out for my project, so hopefully it works out for you as well. So I'm going to start to align my template onto the sweater. I needed to figure out my placement first before I started to piece my template together. I needed to move my toe in more, so I had a shorter toe, like a shorter foot, because originally it was hanging off the edge, and that way here I know that my template is going to fit over the pattern of my vest. Now I'm going to tape things together. You may not need to do that. It really depends on the type of sweater or sweater vest or whatever it is you're cutting from. It'll depend on what you're using, and that will determine whether or not you need to make adjustments like I have. And so now I'm just taping the front and the back together. And then you'll also see that I had put the top of the stocking upside down, and that's lined up with the bottom edge of our vest. I'm going to be trimming this out now. And you can see I'm just going through the tape. It's taped really, really well because I need this to be all one piece. And as mentioned before, I am using some copy paper, and the size is 8.5 by 14. So I am going to be trimming around the heel of our stocking, but you'll see later on that I actually ended up trimming that off a little bit just so it made the foot just a little bit smaller. You can see me here trimming that off. I didn't need that portion, but you make adjustments for whatever material you are using. So I'm going to go ahead and start to line things up again. I just wanted to make sure that the foot of my stocking was going to fit over that bottom light gray leaf that I just pointed out. And you can see that the top of our stocking is no longer matched up with the edge of our vest. That is okay. I am still going to just cut through that. I'm not going to cut off that edge. You'll see me here in a moment once I've got this pinned into place what I will be doing. So it's really important to pin this into place. I did not want this to move. I wanted to make sure I got all those beautiful leaves on my cutout. So that's why I'm pinning it into place. I had to make a few adjustments, but that is okay. All right, so I'm going to cut the excess. I should have probably done this first, but that's okay. Live and learn. As I started to cut this away, I noticed that there was 2 layers. I had no idea that there was 2 layers to this vest. That second layer is the stitching for the leaves. I'm just gonna continue to just trim this off. It'll make it so much easier for me to work with now. So here I'm showing you the 2 different layers. I am going to adhere those 2 together once I have my stocking cut out. So here I'm just cutting a centimeter away, about a centimeter away from the edge of my stocking. That's gonna allow me some seam allowance to either stitch or glue this together. And of course, you know me, I'm going to be using hot glue. You may not need to worry about a second layer, but I am being very careful to make sure that I'm cutting through the 2 layers as I go along. You can see the 2 pieces right here. So at this point, I was trying to figure out how am I going to glue these two edges together. I decided to flip it over and then just lift the edge of that secondary piece. I added some hot glue and that's holding it into place. You can see me pulling on that there. I'm going to continue to work along the edge to help secure it together. I'm being careful not to add too much hot glue because I didn't want it to get really bulky. Hopefully you don't have to do that step. All right, so now I've got this all ready to go. I've got my back side of my sweater vest here. That's going to be the back side of our stocking. I'm going to line that up. This is the inside back piece. I'm laying the two bad sides together right now. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut along the edge of the piece that's already cut out. You can see me doing that here. Again, you want to make sure you've got some good fabric scissors for this project. I've got both pieces cut out. And you can see it's going to look so cute. And you can see I even have the edge of the sweater vest too. That's going to be the top of our stocking. We won't have to do anything there because it's already taken care of. All right, I'm removing the pins and I'm going to remove my template and I'm going to put that aside. You can save that for another project. Look how pretty this is. Isn't that just a gorgeous pattern on there? Okay, now I'm going to be laying the two good sides together. So now the insides are facing out and I'm going to make sure I've got this lined up as best I can. And then you can go ahead and either stitch or glue. So I am, again, just using my hot glue, but you could try using some fabric glue if you've got a really good fabric glue that you like to use as well. All right, it's all glued together. It was just a little off, so I'm going to trim off any excess here. You may not need to do that. This is just me being, I don't know, a perfectionist. I'm not a perfectionist. All right, so I've cleaned that all up. Now I'm going to turn it around. And then if you found that you've missed a few spots, then you'll need to turn it back around and glue those shut. But I actually did pretty good. All right, so I'm just going to work on this to pushing those seams out and look how cute this is. Now for a hanger. I'm using this trim that I had and it happens to be the same color as the light gray color on our stocking. I'm just creating a loop and then I'm using my hot glue to glue each strand to the seam on the back side of our stocking. Now, if you wanted to actually use this stocking, then I would definitely line it with some sturdy fabric, but this is just going to be decorative, so I just left it as is. But I have to say, I am so happy with how this turned out. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's going to add such a nice and cozy feel to the Christmas season. I have, again, so many more sweater projects for you to check out in this playlist right here. I want to thank you all so very much for joining me today, and we will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.